So at the end of my 5th grade year, my family and I moved from Missouri to a hill station located on the base of the Himalayan mountains. And it would seem like an instant. I was popped out of my comfortable life in small town America and had been thrown into utter chaos. Never had I seen so many starving, naked, and without shelter. The numbers enslaved by poverty were overwhelming. As I grew up in India, my narrow-minded perspective quickly began to shift, and my outlook of the world was completely altered. I had come to the conclusion that each and every one of us have the responsibility to take care of the poor. In the next few minutes, I'll be talking about how to effectively alleviate poverty in least developing countries. I believe that this is going to take 3 things of us: an accurate awareness, a transformed attitude, and a productive action. So in this speech, what I'm going to talk to you guys about is what poverty is, then about what our mindsets towards the poor should look like, and finally, how we can take holistic action in helping people in need. The first step in alleviating poverty is creating awareness of what it is and what it looks like. I will begin by defining poverty and describing what it embodies in least developing countries. Many different people and organizations have attempted to define poverty. The United Nations defines extreme poverty by designating least developed countries based on economic vulnerability, human assets, and income. Basically, these are the countries where you're going to see poverty at its very worst. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines poverty simply as the state of being poor. Now, these definitions are very helpful and accurate, but they are also very generic. What I thought was most interesting is how people describe poverty. Professor Rana Salgaramic, a social and political historian, said that poverty is the shameful disease of modern society. Mahatma Gandhi said that poverty is the true form of violence. Now, we can learn 3 things from these definitions. 1, that poverty is obviously a negative thing. 2, that it is very prominent in our world today. But 3, and most importantly, that poverty impacts each and every society in which it is present. Joining with them, a columnist for USA Today, said that 1 billion people are chronically hungry. This means that 1/7 of our world is starving, amounting to more deaths in a single year than the total of all people who died in the wars of 13 countries in the past 50 years. UNICEF states that over 30% of children in least developing countries, amounting to around 600 million kids, live on less than $1 a day. Now, I know that these statistics are very startling, but it's time for us to come to terms with the severity of this issue. So now that we've talked a little bit about what poverty is and what it looks like, we will now talk about what we need to do mentally before we can ever start taking action. Many times, in our efforts to alleviate poverty, we inaccurately depict and view the people we are trying to help. We cannot take effective action if our mindsets are destructive. And I want to talk to you guys about 2 very destructive mindsets that are prominent in our American society today. And the first one is that of dishonoring the poor. We look down on the poor, we don't want to know anything about it, and even if we have come to terms with the issues, we see them as less than us because they're of a lower status than we are. The other destructive mindset is that of elevating the poor. We feel pity on them, we feel sorry for them, and so we want to glorify them solely because they have suffered. Both mindsets are destructive. Can you imagine what would happen if we understood the fact that no matter our socioeconomic status, we all have things in common that make us uniquely human? We all have innate pride. We all have innate curiosity. We are all part of rich, beautiful cultures. We all have humor, desires, interests, and hobbies. This past semester, many freshmen had to read the book The Heart and the Fist by Eric Greitens. In the beginning of this book, Greitens talks about how he went over, in his college years, to Rwanda as a journalist and photographer. And in this chapter, Rwanda, he described how he wanted to portray and depict the Rwandan refugees he was photographing. And I love what he said. Here it is. I wanted to capture their portraits. Few Americans had seen this strong people, survivors, solid, steadfast. Now notice that Greitens did not describe these people as weak or incapable, but he didn't make them the heroes of the day either. He saw them exactly for who they were, and that's exactly how he photographed them. When we either dishonor or glorify the poor, and see them exactly for who they are, much like you and I, we can take effective action in helping them. So now that we've talked a little bit about what poverty is, and what our mindsets towards the poor should look like, we can now talk about taking productive action. Effectively alleviating poverty consists of a creative combination of money, strategies, and opportunities. opportunity. Contrary to popular belief, truly helping someone in need is not the equivalent of giving them a financial handout. I love what the ancient Chinese proverb says: give a man a fish and you feed him for one day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. A more recent source from a 2014 article in U.S. Official News says that aid should not destroy local economies in order to provide temporary relief. And in our American mindsets, in our American culture, we want quick fixes. Many people think it's perfectly okay for money to be the only component of their plan in alleviating poverty. What we don't realize is that if that is the only component to our plan, we are only adding to that temporary relief, not to that long-lasting solution. Fortunately, there are amazing examples of how communities, organizations, and groups of people have beautifully combined money, strategy, and opportunity. And the first one I want to talk to you guys about is from our own Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. And this is what he said pertaining to countries in need of food. He said our goals should be to increase the availability of food by helping people in countries produce what they need. There's where your money comes in. To make the food accessible to those who need it. There's your strategy. And to teach people to use it properly. There's your opportunity. And yet another amazing example is from a 2014 article in the Times of India talking about rebuilding Kashmir. And what people are doing is that they're going into business communities and meeting with business owners and business entrepreneurs and training them to stabilize their economy from the inside out. And yet another great example is from the 2014 article in the Financial Express, talking about how people are going into communities in need and promoting awareness about health, education, and business. And what I love about these examples is that we can use them to impact our own spheres of influence. As college students, we can raise the funds, we can develop a strategy, and we can create the opportunities. In conclusion, I talked about three main ideas today: awareness, attitude, and action. I talked first about how we can initially alleviate poverty, which is educating ourselves on the issue. Then I talked about how we need to shape and mold our mindsets to accurately view people in need. And finally, how we can use money, strategy, and opportunity to holistically help people exactly where they are at. I hope that you have gained insight and knowledge from the information and facts I have shared with you today, and that now you will become a part of effectively alleviating poverty in the least developed nations of our world.